Good evening, Niner faithful. Welcome to another episode of your favorite show, Between Two Beards. I'm your host, Rob Schuh, joined as always by Randon, McMahon, sporting the beard, the Niner gear, and the pleased smile over there on my right, left, whatever the hell side that is. Randon, how pumped are you this week? It's Super Bowl week. The Niners aren't in it, but it's still the Super Bowl. Are you excited for the game on Sunday?
Yeah. Wings, beer, fun, football. It is what it is. Going for Joe Burrow because he's the man. You know, saying that he practices in silence. He'll be the best first overall pick to ever be drafted if he wins a Super Bowl this year, based on statistics. And so, just it's crazy. So, like, I'm rooting for him.
I'm on board with that. We got to stop with the whole Joe Cool nonsense. Like, that name is taken, Joe, ease up on the Joe Cool.
But the Joe Burr, like you get the rap influence, the Burr, I'm not a rap guy, but I'm down with it. Anyways, I want him to win. I like a bad Stafford. If he wasn't playing for the Rams, I always rooted for him in the Lions, but
yeah, I actually do have a soft spot in my heart for Matthew Stafford as well.
But Joe Burrow's killing the game right now.
Yeah, if the Rams win, that will be my solace, is that, hey, finally Matthew Stafford got rid of that huge monkey off of his back and was able to win one. That would be enough of a pick-me-up for me, if you will.
Before we get into our topics, I saw this thrown around on Twitter. If Stafford wins the Super Bowl this year with the Rams and is solid the rest of the career, do you think that he has a case of being a Hall of Famer?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think so. I mean, let's be honest. Other than the lack of success in the playoffs, he put up some pretty phenomenal statistical seasons in Detroit. I mean, he was that, over 4,000-yard passer for a long time. I feel like his is the kind of career that gets justified by the Super Bowl ring, right? Because people already wanted to say he was elite, that he was great. And if he can win the ring, it sort of proves that right over time.
The stain of Detroit would be erased with a ring.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hate to talk trash about Detroit. I love that franchise. I hearken back to the Barry Sanders days. I played with Detroit on Madden way back in the day on Sega Genesis, and so I've got a soft spot there.
He kind of reminds me of a modern day Brett Favre. Like, he's not as vocal as Brett Favre, in the media, but he's not afraid to throw it anywhere. And if what Chad Ochocinco said, like, if I'm in a phone booth covered by three people, throw me the ball, I'll find a way to catch it. Like, that's Matt Stafford in a key. Like, he's not afraid to throw it anywhere. He makes a lot of bad throws, but he makes a lot of throws that you need to pick your jaw up off the floor. And his time was wasted in Detroit. Obviously Megatron, was a big solace there, or not a solace, but a pick me up for that franchise. Like, that combination was good on the highlight reel, but man, like, if he can win a championship with LA, as much as I don't want them to, being a Niners fan, for Stafford, I think that might put his case in contention for a gold jacket.
I agree. And as do folks in some of the comments, Tabular Bike agreeing, yes, quite frankly, he is. Silent Seth, sneakerhead on the channel, he's a top 5 quarterback if you don't count team success. Which is interesting. I mean, wins and losses, we've gotten into that debate as 49er faithful many times as to whether wins and losses are a quarterback stat, and most clearly they are not. It's a team game.
What's crazy is that his best friend is Clayton Kershaw. They're both lived in Dallas. They both grew up. Clayton Kershaw used to be his center in Pop Warner.
Wow.
And they're both one of the best regular season artisanals of their game, but they've struggled in the postseason, whether it be personal with the Dodgers, and Clayton Kershaw, or the team with Matt Stafford. Now Kershaw got his ring. We'll see if Stafford gets his ring, but they've been best friends since they were in almost diapers. It'll be interesting to see if the Dallas boys can both win a ring.
Yes, it will be interesting. Raphael coming in. Anyone who was aware of sports in the 90s has a soft spot for Barry Sanders. That's very, very true. Right alongside.
Mine is right here. It's on my back, right? Yeah.
Right alongside Bo Jackson, another soft spot for an elite running back whose career was too short. Mark Andrade coming in. He's a Hall of Fame, no doubt. He just played in Detroit. LOL. All right. Drew YC is getting into a little precursor. We're going to touch on this. We got an NFC West update segment coming later, but that's a teaser, meaning we got to get into our frickin' topics here, Drew.
Yeah, Drew, just hold your laces a little bit, man. We're getting into that. Appreciate the help.
Get started. All right. This one is interesting. So, the San Francisco 49ers, you may have heard, brought in an outside coaching hire. They brought in Anthony Lynn. Does this fresh blood, does this outside coaching hire of Anthony Lynn signify a change by Kyle Shanahan?
I think it does. So now let's do a little preface for what we're doing here.
Good sir.
So I think that you look at Mike McDaniel. A lot of people have said that he was the architect for a lot of the design runs. He's been there a long time.
Right.
And Shanahan was the play caller that strung all together. So, right.
Yeah, I've even gone so far as to read that on Monday, Tuesday, Mike McDaniel would sort of take those days to work on the run game. Kyle Shanahan would work on the pass game, and then they would come together later in the week.
Yeah, just it's putting the symphony together and then the orchestra, right? So when you look at Lynn and his track record, right, ever since he's been in charge of the run game, these are the running backs that are in charge of him, right? Fred Taylor, 1,500 yards, 1,200 yards. Julius Jones and Marion Barber combination, over 1,400 yards every single season they were in Dallas. Lewis in Cleveland, 1,300, 1,000. Thomas Jones, 1,400. LT, LaDainian Thomas and Sean Green, over 1,600 in the Jets his first season. Then Green had multiple yards, yada, 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 all the way up to the Chargers, where 4 straight seasons of the top 11, I know it's a weird number because I don't want to say top 10 minus 1, but top 11 season, all 4 years he was there, man. He's been phenomenal in the run game, and he took control of that team when it was just Phillip Rivers slinging it on his own. So he created that run accoutrement, if you will, to what Phillip Rivers was doing.
Right.
And so he's been successful almost every single year. There was only 1 year that he didn't have a combination of over 1,000 yards in his entire tenure of being a coach. That's
pretty phenomenal.
And so for me, it's like, okay, you know what? Not only did he get the most rushing yards in his career as a Niner, he's going to have the best season ever he's ever had as a rushing coordinator as a Niner, because I believe that him and Shanahan can come up with some great stuff.
I would concur. I mean, this, you would think, would be one of the more talented units that he has been aboard. And he has, every unit he has been with has had a very balanced attack where it is both run and pass. And one of the things in my research that I uncovered was with many of those more recent teams where he was either the head coach, offensive coordinator, or in some level run game coordinator, you were looking at offensive lines that were middle of the pack as far as run blocking go. And the San Francisco 49ers, as you well know, were one of the best in run blocking, if not the best, when you look at the second half of the season for San Francisco. So you're walking into a situation with clearly at least one very talented back on the roster, a couple of complementary players to fill out the room, the potential to bring back another back in Raheem Mostert, who is a phenomenal fit within the system, and then a run blocking offensive line with the return of Mike McGlinchey, whose strength is run blocking, and hopefully filling back out the center with Alex Mack returning. And fingers crossed they bring back in Laken Tomlinson as a free agent. This could be the best scenario that Anthony Lynn walks into.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of things like that is what Trey Sermon is Melvin Gordon 2.0, a bigger back that has pass catching ability in college, is better within the tackles and really hasn't got that run. Could we see a Melvin Gordon-Eckler combo? I mean, I know Eckler is way better pass catcher than Mitchell is, but overall, can we see that heavy light combination that we've seen in a lot of his tenure, right? So you have LT and Sean Green, you have Julius Jones and Marion Barber. Has many opportunities having multiple running backs in the scheme and being able to develop a scheme that gears towards those. I think it's phenomenal. And then you can't bring to light, or you can't discount what Shanahan's doing here. And I know that was a long way to bring back to your question. I think it's super growth, right? Because Anthony Lynn has shown he's a head coach. He has shown he has a top rushing attack in multiple years. across his tenure. Shanahan's never had a coach that is equal, or maybe some people opinion is above him in his credentials coaching with him. And I think that shows growth within Shanahan.
I certainly can't take the position of above Shanahan in credentials, but if you look at being even close to equal to, I agree. I think that is something that's a step in the right direction for Kyle. To me, it is bringing in the fresh blood that's so refreshing in this scenario. That Kyle Shanahan to this point has been great at promoting from within and bringing in people that have ties to his coaching tree. And while Anthony Lynn certainly has some ties to his father, there at least is no tie with Kyle Shanahan in that regard. And so you would imagine that this could be a powerful voice inside the room, a powerful voice on the sideline, a powerful voice in those big games, in those big moments. And, you hear people being a little bit critical of the hire when looking at Anthony Lynn also struggling in some time management issues that Kyle Shanahan had. But to me, again, bringing in someone who is that strong voice, but isn't in the role of head coach, isn't under pressure in those key moments, he can offer his insight without that same feeling of impending, not doom, but in those moments, that high pressure, forming a diamond, he can be that other voice.
Let me ask you then. Yeah. Will he respect Anthony Lynn's perspective for timeouts, for game management, for all these kind of things, right? Both Lynn and Shanahan have pretty much done it on their own. They were their first time coaching gigs, right? Head coaching gigs. So this is they're both in their budding opportunity. Now Shanahan's outside of his 5-year tenure.
Yeah.
Lynn got fired. So are they going to be able to respect each other's opinion? And Lynn's like, hey, Shanahan, I know you're coaching the game. I know you're deep in your thought, but we need to take a timeout here, or we need to do this here. Do you think that Anthony Lynn will deserve that respect?
I think he does deserve that respect. My fear is that that's not what Kyle Shanahan will turn to him for, that's still an area he will sort of struggle through. But simply having another strong voice, simply having someone there with that presence, with that gravitas, to me, the hope is that Shanahan is more inspired in those moments. He'll still look inward, in my opinion. He'll still be, going with his own gut on those. But much like when Debo came out after that interception in Dallas and said, I got you, I think that Shanahan's going to feel inspired to call certain plays because of Anthony Lynn and because of the gravitas he brings.
If it's a 50-50 shot and Anthony Lynn said, let's go, do you think that'll tilt it?
I do. I absolutely do. I think he's a respected opinion. No doubt about it. All right. Just wanted to bring in, it looks like a couple of comments that are relevant here. Wanted to bring in Raphael. This is a two-parter. Humans aren't good at many things, but one thing we are good at is adapting. It's possible Kyle is looking to take a little off his plate with the hire of Lynn. I agree with that. And that, if he does that, if he takes a little bit off of his plate, I think that helps him in those moments that you're talking about, Randon. I think if he can take away some responsibility from himself and give it to somebody else, it takes just a little bit of that pressure away.
Yeah, thank you for coming out of the sewer, Raphael. I know Leonardo and Michelangelo might be missing you, but grab some pizza and great comment. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. All right. Going on to our next topic, which is a transition from the first to the second. It's a very interrelated series of topics that we have here to start. We talked about the significance that Anthony Lynn brings to the run game, right? Tons of experience, tons of coaching acumen, a long success track record. But what about that pass game, Kyle? You brought in Anthony Lynn, clearly going to help in that regard, but it doesn't feel as if anything was done to shore up the pass game. And if I had to pick one of the two that was a little bit less successful over this past season and in years prior for the San Francisco 49ers, I would say it's the pass game. So is Coach Shanahan just counting on the quarterback change to Trey, reversing all of those trends?
I think he might. And the fact that this is not over with, right? We already seen one coach, Embree, went to Miami today, right before this podcast. Miami and Mike McDaniel might not be over with in their coaching hires, and then we're not over with either, right? And we're going to get to that eventually. But the pass game seems like it needs the most upgrade, right? It has been the least consistent portion of our game. And so are you relying on Trey Lance to bring that to you? He's been the best quarterback in the last 3 years for throwing the ball downfield in his game against the Texans. So do you extrapolate that long-term with your vision of the 49ers? And I think they kind of do, but they also need a little bit of help, right? If you're doing the best by Trey Lance, wouldn't you bring in a coach that has a track record of nurturing quarterbacks? I know Lynn has done Geno Smith, Tyrod Taylor, which are running quarterbacks. You know, they both have over 400, 500 yards rushing.
Yeah.
And then you have Herbert in his rookie year, you know, a little bit less rushing yards, but throwing the ball downfield. So he emphasized the talents of his quarterback late in the year. I know that's a long question, but so is Lynn enough, or do you think they need to go further?
I think they need to go further. And I know this sounds a bit off, but I'm with Mark's question here, asking, do you know of any other coaches that McDaniel may take with him alongside Embree? And then the responding answer from Swansong talking about supposedly Rich Gangrello coming along to Miami. I would actually take that as a positive for that very reason, that I'm just not convinced that Rich Gangrello is the right guy to develop Trey Lance. I think you do have to do additional things in order to prop up Trey Lance. You cannot expect that the simple change of quarterback will have the entire effect that's needed. It should be a phenomenal effect. I mean, you look at the skill set of Trey Lance as compared to Jimmy Garoppolo, and there's sort of night and day differences that jump off of the page. You go back and watch a highlight reel of Trey Lance throwing deep bombs. It is, you know, a thing of beauty that we did not often see with Jimmy Garoppolo. But I do think that you have to help him out. And the ways in which you do that, to me, are twofold. The first one is bringing in that quarterback's coach. And we'll get into any potential coaches, any big coaching hires the Niners might make later. So we need not get into the names right now. But I will say that the other thing the 49ers need to do, the part two in my mind, is continuing to surround Trey with that talent in the pass game. Right now, we only have 2 wide receivers under contract, Debo and Brandon Ayuk. That is it, right? Jawan Jennings is a restricted free agent, or not restricted, but the other one.
ERFA. What is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, I have it right here in my notes. Exclusive rights free agent. Oh, okay. I didn't need to pull it up in the notes. It just came to me. Exclusive rights free agent, which means that all you got to do is say, we want you back. Here's the minimum deal. And then you're back. Yeah. You can't deal with anybody else in the league. So Jawan Jennings is going to be back. But still, that's only 3 wide receivers. So to me, you have to fill that out. You have to have that deep threat on the roster. And I don't think it can be the declining Travis Benjamin. I think it's got to be an up-and-coming star who can grow alongside Trey so that he can push the ball downfield.
Yeah, two things here is, one, I think they already have that receiver on the roster in Ayuk. Ayuk hasn't been pressured down the field.
That's
and
fair.
Two, Jennings has been shown that he can have that slot, right? He did more than Kendrick Bourne in his second year on the Niners, and he can only get better within the team. And 2, if it were me and if I was Jed York, I would hire, I don't know what the coaching restrictions are. I don't know if there are salary restrictions for the coaches, but I would bring everybody and their mom in to make sure that Trey Lance blossoms into the all-pro Super Bowl winning flower that he possibly could be. And I wouldn't leave any page unturned. So for me, it's that bring in whatever coach you can bring in, right? And the pass game is just as important. I'm sorry if you can hear the dogs in the background. Somebody's walking their dogs by. So if you can hear that, I apologize.
No dogs are audible on my end, although I'm hard of hearing. So everyone that's watching the podcast is like, yeah, Rob, I hear the fucking dogs.
Yeah. Clean out the wax, brother. And but I'm saying that, like, you need to bring in somebody for the pass game and develop all those things. I think the only reason that we saw the Deebo Samuel wide back option this year is that he wasn't utilized downfield very much.
Right.
Ayuk wasn't utilized down very much. The number one where Kittle can exploit is in the middle of the field. And if you're rolling outside, you can run those option routes, right? Run Kittle up the field, option left or right. Boom, that passes in the flat. Touchdown. We're all sipping beers. We're all having fun, high-fiving everybody, because he's pushing the ball downfield. And I think that not only does that need to be schemed up, but that needs to be coached up. And we need to bring in whoever they need to bring to make that happen.
Yeah, I do agree that even those players that are on the roster right now are ones that have greater skills in the deep passing game that are not being utilized to this point. I think you bring up excellent arguments in that case. I would say even beyond that, the Niners are in need of that speed wide receiver. And I'll be doing my draft research to see which late round guy they might take a flyer on. Because then you can package something up where it's both your deep threat wide receiver and a return guy, which the Niners need desperately.
Ooh, no spoilers there, man. We got the special teams deep cut coming up soon.
Hey, we will get there. Let's get on to the evolution of Trey Lance. This is just an opportunity to talk about how multiple coaches on the staff now have experience with different mobile quarterbacks. So Anthony Lynn comes in, and you mentioned it. You can go way back in time and see a season with Geno Smith, right? But more recently, and I would argue probably the two most relevant are when he was the offensive coordinator and then head coach of the Buffalo Bills and then the Los Angeles Chargers, although I guess he started out as the San Diego Chargers there with Phillip Rivers. But that was obviously Tyrod Taylor in Buffalo, 15 and 16, and then the rookie season for Justin Herbert versus Kyle Shanahan and his experience with Robert Griffin III. What do you see as sort of the differences there, and do you believe that experience will assist in developing Trey Lance?
So I think it all comes down to what Shanahan believes Trey Lance's ability is.
Okay.
Right? Is he a pure runner like RG3 with some pass, or is he more of Herbert, right? Where he believes that the pass effectiveness of throwing the ball downfield, getting him outside the pocket, and most of the running yards are going to be on scrambles. What does Shanahan believe that Trey Lance could do in his first year? So, I personally believe that it's going to be somewhere in between. I don't think it's going to be Lamar Jackson 1,000-yard rushing. I don't think it's going to be Herbert 200 yards rushing in his rookie year. I think it's going to be somewhere around 400 to 500 yards, and they're going to try to push the ball downfield. They're going to be okay with a little bit of turnovers of trying to exploit the defense, but I think maybe 250, 300 yards are going to be on scrambles because of his athletic ability and his size versus Herbert, and there's going to be some design runs, and I think the evolution of Lance is going to be not only within Lynn's hands, but what Shanahan is comfortable with and what Lance is grappling within the offense to diagnose those things. Because some of the scrambles are noticing if there's a run opportunity, right? You see guys that are less aptitude of running, like Aaron Rodgers and all those guys, they still find holes.
Most definitely.
And so where does his vision line up next season is only up to him. Where are the design runs coming from? And how often are they moving him outside the pocket to exploit his athletic ability? It's trifold in this thing. It's the Trinity. Like, how do all these things come together? And I think it's a little bit around 400 yards rushing-ish, maybe 500, and more deep threats downfield. What do you think?
I tend to see him right about that. I made my stat prediction on Trey yesterday, and I had him there at 500 yards rushing. So we're in agreement there. And I do think that what Coach Shanahan has learned and at least has put across in his words, not necessarily his actions, but his words, has tried to convince us that what he's looking for in Trey Lance is a pocket passer first, who uses his legs as an option, right? It's not going to be, I'm dependent upon my legs, and that's the way in which this offense runs. But then we got the first game against against Arizona, and that confused the message because it seemed to me that he altered the entire game plan to really say, well, this guy isn't ready yet to be a pocket passer, so I'm going to do what I think I need to do in order to win this game. And so I do think there's a little bit of a lack of alignment there. My hope is that it is the former, that it is what he says he wants Trey Lance to be. And I think that's where Anthony Lynn's experience with Justin Herbert, who didn't have that many rushing yards in his rookie season, and Tyrod Taylor, who also attempted to be a pocket passer, who used his scrambling ability to increase his effectiveness, but not be totally reliant upon it. To me, that helps in the development. What I don't want to see is an RG3 type rookie season where it is clear that the legs are the primary weapon and the arm sort of complements that. I think that ended in disaster for good reason. I believe that your tenure as quarterback is shortened significantly if you are not a very spry runner. Lamar Jackson, to me, is a freak of nature in his ability to elude some of the big hits. But even he takes a lot of big licks, and that's got to shorten your lifespan. When you put that much in a quarterback, I'd rather he be more of a pocket passer, in my opinion.
Yeah, let me ask you this. I mean, because with the quarterback, there has to be a wide receiver who is good at the scrambling drills, who is good at the when the play breaks down, or even if it's a design play outside the pocket, right? You see some of the best quarterbacks at the Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and then even Kyler Murray in our own division with DeAndre Hopkins, who is probably the best wide receiver outside the pocket at creating things and creating open space. Do the Niners have a wide receiver that can do that? Right? I mean, Deebo Samuel's counted on for so many things. Can he be counted on another thing? Can Ayuk be that kind of person? Is Kittle going to be allowed to go outside the run blocking applement like Travis Kelce and be in the freedom space that the Chiefs use him? There, if you're gonna create an offense that allows Trey Lance to go outside the pocket, you have to have weapons that are allowed to do the same things as well. And within Shanahan's offense, all those players have to block first and be open second. Will the designed offense allow them for that creativity?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see an obvious wide receiver on the roster that fills that. I think, Deebo, to your point, is a stud wide receiver and is capable of that. I think that requires the type of chemistry that potentially Trey Lance develops with Brandon Ayuk, with the simple fact that they're spending considerable time together over last offseason and then apparently carrying into this one, spending that time in Southern California. I feel like it's the mind meld. It's not just the athletic ability. It is the athletic ability, don't get me wrong, between Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, but it's the mind meld in addition to the athletic ability that makes it
not even having to say anything. They're communicating 30 yards downfield without even a nod. Yeah,
totally. It's sort of crazy in that regard. Like it's one of those things that it's a feel that they have for one another, and I would guess that that's got to be developed. But I do think that they need to look for these type of playmakers later on in the draft. Again, take some flyers. They now have 10 picks, right? They've got to use those up to fill up the roster with cheap bodies because they got about 20 freaking players they need to add to that 53-man roster and only about $20 million to do it. And that's after trading Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think
Shanahan has to loosen up. I think Shanahan has to loosen up and be okay with some mistakes. Right,
I would agree with that. Yeah,
you're rolling out Trey Lance, and you're trying to develop that mind meld. That doesn't come over day, right? You had Jordy Nelson. You had Jordy Nelson on the Packers, was the number one guy when Devontae Adams was there, and that was earned from Devontae Adams. So where is that being earned? You're having to earn it not only from Trey Lance but from one of the wide receivers, and that has to be allowed outside the script of the play. Shanahan's been known to, hey, it's my script or nothing. Is that going to be something that's going to be available for both players?
He's a perfectionist and he wants things run exactly how he wants them run. And you could see him yelling at Jimmy when that wasn't the case. Now, some of those were warranted times to yell at Jimmy, but I like your point.
This is not that hard. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's got to loosen up a bit on Trey, because if he has that same perfectionist attitude, Trey is in his formative years. To Fred Warner's point, you want Trey to be taking some of these shots. You don't want him to be hyper conservative as he was in practice before Fred Warner came to him and said, hey, Trey, let it rip. We need that practice as a defense. I think the same thing is going to be true. We need a more electric offense. Kyle Shanahan's got to be patient and let him rip a little bit.
I 100% agree, man. Let's hope so. Let's move it on to the next topic, because we're 30 minutes deep and we got a lot more to go.
Let's talk a little bit about Detroit's leftovers. And no, we're not talking about delicious Detroit-style pizza, which, if you haven't had it, is phenomenal. Deep dish pizza in a cast iron frickin' skillet. The nice high sides, beautiful melted mozzarella, and then the frickin' sauce on top of the pizza. It's delicious.
Man, that pizza, and then their chili dogs that they have there, man, we could be having a feast right now. Detroit, send it our way. I appreciate it.
Hey, Detroit. All right, so are we getting Detroit's leftovers, or was this sort of a meeting of the minds and a mutual agreement when he stepped out of there?
So Anthony Lynn, went to Detroit this year, and obviously they had Swift and Williams there, and hey, they ran it down our throats week one. We lucky that we got out in front. It was still a 1-score game. A lot of people think that wasn't the case, but they came back in that game. I know we were playing secondary, and you can make that case that, hey, it wasn't even close or what have you. But Detroit ran it down a lot of people's throats all year, and it was off and on. But the fact they had no pass game, like people could load the box, similar to what we saw with the Niners. But I think that they mutually parted ways because Anthony Lynn probably was saying, hey, I could be the offensive coordinator here for the next 4 years, and I might not get the respect of 1 year in San Francisco. We saw what Mike McDaniel did with his 1 year. Obviously, he was here a lot longer, but his spotlight of him being the run game guy or the offensive guy outside of Shanahan netted him the Miami job, right? So even if Trey Lance has a better offensive season or they make the playoffs or they do whatever, Anthony Lynn could be in a head coaching pool come next offseason. What do you think?
I agree. I think it could absolutely be a one and done season for Anthony Lynn. And that had to be on his mind when he left Detroit. I mean, that is a process. Rebuilding Detroit is a freaking process. It has been a nightmare for a while. And until you get an answer at quarterback, I think it's fair to say Jared Goff isn't that answer.
It's like cleaning your shower. It's obnoxious. Yeah.
It's over and freaking over. It is nonstop. That rebuild process is going to be nonstop. So I think you're right that Anthony Lynn could have turned that run game around. He could have slowly brought that franchise along on offense and still potentially not gotten himself a head coaching offer. Along with San Francisco, maybe it's 2 years, but it's certainly a possibility if the Niners come out. Trey has a great rookie year. The Niners make the playoffs. It has been a turnstile for players, for coaches headed on to head coaching opportunities. So to me, it's absolutely a question of Anthony Lynn looking for, greener pastures and San Francisco presenting that option.
Yeah, you look at the amount of primetime games. I think Detroit's had one each of the last 2 years, and they're on the 100-year rebuild plan, according to Jinx there.
It's cold. Dustin, if you're watching, Dustin's my buddy who's a Detroit Lions fan. Dustin, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but we got to take our shots where we can.
Yeah, but I think they have the Thanksgiving game, and that's it, right? And it's usually the first game of the day. They're not even getting primetime stuff. People are still waking up and having their mimosas. Where San Francisco's got 5 primetime games the last 3 or 2 years, and so chances are they're going to get another 5, right? With Trey Lance and the matchups and all this kind of stuff, they're going to get another 5, and then
you would think so.
Then you're looking at what we expect, right? Even if you expect the same record with Jimmy Garoppolo, they're in the playoffs, they're getting a postseason thing. Anthony Lynn's on the forefront of that offense, and if Trey Lance is a top 10 quarterback, he's almost a guarantee to get a head coaching job, which is for him is what he wants.
I would think so.
It's a win. It's a win for San Francisco, getting that leadership, getting that run game, getting all that kind of stuff, getting extra help to nurture Trey Lance. And then it's a win for Anthony Lynn.
I would agree. John V coming in with a good transitional statement here. Any chance Lynn is here so that Kyle can spend more of his attention to help develop Trey? I think in essence, my answer to this would be yes, in that this allows Kyle Shanahan to remain focused on the pass game as he was before. However, it's a great transition to our next topic of will there be any more big coaching hires? Because again, to me, it's just not enough. You need to bring someone who's going to help develop Lance with regard to his throwing motion, with regard to the passing game, because I just don't know that Kyle Shanahan is qualified in that area.
I think it's the exact opposite. I think they're bringing in Lynn to shoulder the load, right? To Shanahan needs to get better as a head coach. So and that involves everything. And if you're so focused on developing Trey Lance and you're forgetting about the rest of your team, time management, timeouts, how the team's all working, now you're bringing in a guy who has multiple years as a head coach who you could just say, hey, develop this person, be his guy. And Shanahan can develop too. Everybody's all, the rising tides raises all boats, right? So I think it's the exact opposite. I think they brought in Lynn to shoulder that load of development for the offense. He's known as a player's coach. And so where Shanahan's knows more of a silent disciplinarian, right? He's his cold shoulder when you're
the
when you're
dog
there.
house.
Yeah, but then he's wearing Yeezys and throwing footballs and pizza ovens and all this kind of stuff like that. So he's a hard amoeba to understand. Where Lynn has mainly been a player's coach his whole career and has been a player at this level. I mean, yeah, Shanahan did it in college and he's been there with his, but Lynn was a running back in San Francisco and he won 2 Super Bowls under Mike Shanahan as a special teamer. Like he knows what it needs to get it done. He knows what it's like to have that pressure on him. And so I believe that he was brought in to kind of shoulder that load, not to let Shanahan do that. Let Shanahan be the head coach. Lynn's going to run the offense, not from a play calling standpoint, but from a managerial standpoint.
That'll be interesting to watch unfold. I tend to see Shanahan as someone who's not going to let his claws off of the offense too much. So I'm more in the middle ground there, in between John and the point you just laid out there. But let's transition into any potential big coaching hires for the 49ers. So as of yet, nothing is official as to who Mike McDaniel is dragging with him. But these are the rumors, right? The rumor is that John Embree will be joining him, but he's not with the 49ers anymore anyway. So
he's already on the Dolphins as of this podcast.
He's been signed now. Okay, but he was no longer with the Niners anyway. So that one was a foregone conclusion for San Francisco. Now he's joined Miami. The other one is Rich Scangarello being potentially linked as the offensive coordinator. Rich is currently the quarterback coach with San Francisco. I've not heard of any other names transitioning with Mike over to Miami. I'm sure some will come out, but I just want to throw out that one of the names that had been thrown around as the Niners attempting to bring in with a quarterback coach title, potentially having to sweeten the pot a little bit, was Pep Hamilton. But now he's going to be the offensive coordinator with Lovie Smith there in Houston. So it looks like he is locked down. I saw a mention of Pep earlier on in the comments when we were talking about potential QB coach hires to bring in. So to me, it stands out that you've got to most likely replace quarterback coach, special teams, and the tight end position coach as well.
Yeah, I mean, you just stole my thunder. Thanks, Pep. I mean, I know you're trying to get an upgrade in your position. You just stole my thunder there. Now, for me, it's and I'm not in depth with all the coaching availability across the league.
Sure,
but I said you want to nurture this flower, right? And who has been Shanahan's go-to guy for quarterbacks? Who is Trey Lance visiting in the upcoming weeks? Is Beck, right? I think it's John Beck. And so, would you create him QB coach or passing game coordinator? Like, I don't know what Beck is making, right? If he's coaching,
he may be making a pretty penny
5,
doing
6,
what he's doing
7
now.
quarterbacks a year. He might be making more than what he'd make as a coordinator or whatever, and so maybe that's not of use to him. But for me, it's like bringing a guy that is going to develop and nurture Trey's mechanics.
Yeah,
right. And that's where I would go.
Are you, if you're the San Francisco 49ers, because I think it's fair to say, and we made this point earlier, you referenced some of these things in speaking about Lynn coming in, that the San Francisco 49ers, it's a pretty good destination to come work, right? You're going to get to operate in primetime games this season. You're going to get to work with potentially the most talented young quarterback in the league with Trey Lance. You're going to be working for Kyle Shanahan, and therefore you're going to become a sought-after commodity after X number of seasons. And the evidence is there that Kyle Shanahan is running a head coaching production factory. If you're the San Francisco 49ers, are you relying on that to be enough to sweeten the pot for whomever your target is, assuming that you want to bring in somebody that is a quality candidate, or are you using that offensive coordinator title as a little honey to sweeten the pot?
Probably both. I mean, right, you have 2 head coaching hires in the last 2 years, both diversity hires, by the way, which has been a league thing with Saleh and McDaniel. And so they've been really pushing that forward. And I really think that they need to look at nurturing that for Trey Lance, whatever they need to do. And I'm sure money is not an issue with the head coaching jobs. It's probably just title oriented.
Right.
And if you really have traded up that many picks to get this quarterback, why wouldn't you bring in whatever you need to do to make him successful?
I tend to agree. Don't get cheap around this one, Jed. You've got enough money. Levi's brings in plenty of cash. take some of that cash, take that offensive coordinator title, and go find whomever you're freaking sweetest on at this point in time.
Yeah, it's a blackjack. You get dealt double tens. Split that baby, double down. Let's put it all in on Trey Lance and bring in whatever coach you need to bring in.
Yes. I love this reference that I had come across in touching on Bill Belichick and how he was able to stay successful while still producing this head coach factory, which I think the 49ers have now become the West Coast version of that, right? Losing Robert Saleh, losing Mike McDaniel, having lost Martin Mayhew, potentially losing
DeMeco
Rand
Ryans.
Carthen. Yeah, potentially using DeMeco Ryans at some point. Like, all these people are moving on because of the fact that Kyle Shanahan has this gravitas, has this genius. Everyone wants a piece. Bill Belichick dealt with it for years and continued to keep winning. And there were two reasons cited for that. And I think they both apply to Kyle Shanahan as well. It gives me optimism we can continue being elite. Number one, just being such a good coach that he can do 3 or 4 different jobs, that he can apply himself to the defense. He can apply himself to the offense and add value there depending on where he lost the coach. And then the second part is the much more important one that ties into this topic. It's that smart coaches, ambitious coaches, are then attracted to that team, much like the Patriots, the San Francisco 49ers, because that team has produced these other smart, ambitious coaches that go on to have, a career as a head coach somewhere else. So to me, they are going to be bringing in, it's like a recruiting firm. They're going to be getting quality candidates in. So that gives me a little solace that they can fill these roles with quality people.
I think so too. And eventually you're going to have to bring people in because the tree is going to get sapped, right? And you're going to have to bring in people who want the opportunity to be coached under Shanahan or be a part of that tree or have you. But yeah, it's been fascinating. You look at, all 4 coaches coached under the Browns. It was Shanahan, McVay, the coach for LaFleur, and now the guy that, I just escaped my mind. The guy that went to the Miami, McDaniel. So they were all under the same team, and they were all friends together, all on the same coaching tree. And now they all are head coaches. So
yeah, and all on a losing team that year.
All on a losing team that year, and now actually McDaniel's on a winning team too, right? Didn't the Miami finish 9-7? And they just lost out. Yeah. So it's going to be something to see, and I think that if you were looking to be an offensive coach in anywhere in the league, San Francisco would be priority number one.
Yeah, why would you not choose San Francisco? It would be crazy. Juanito brings this in. I don't know that there's any chance of this happening, but I just have to agree with the statement. What about JT O'Sullivan? His QB breakdown videos are really good. I agree with that second part. His freaking podcast, his videos are phenomenal. He's just great at that. I can't imagine him wanting to leave that role because of how good he is at it, but I'd be on board just because of watching those videos.
Yeah, breakdowns and coaching are 2 different things. If he can do both, I really like his diagnostics. I'm an analytical guy myself. What is there? Quincy Avery, I think, is another quarterback coach. But I think you need to bring a guy in that he's comfortable with that not only does mechanics, but has knowledge within the pass game.
Agreed. All right, this is a harsh transition, but we got to cover the NFC West.
Yeah,
Randon.
let's U-turn this bad boy.
Let's U-turn this Samama. All right, NFC West updates. There's some news going on. In case people were not aware, Kyler Murray's fleeing Arizona. Russell Wilson is leaving Seattle, and the Rams are in the Super Bowl. That's the short of it. Let's talk about it one by one. Kyler Murray, this situation, I don't know what it means. I have no idea. I was kidding about the fact that he's leaving. I don't think there's anything concrete in that regard. But what he has done is he's removed the Cardinals from his social media. This happened with Trey Sermon for the Niners earlier in the year. There was a whole story about how on his Instagram, he pulled the Niners off of the little bio that he had there. Nothing really came of it. This could mean a lot of things. What do you think it means for Kyler Murray?
With a high-profile athlete, it pretty much means he broke up with his girlfriend, quote unquote, and he's just waiting to move out.
Yeah.
And so I think that, one, if he's going to baseball because maybe he's injured or he's tired of the things we've seen major athletes who've had injuries move on. Patrick Willis, and multiple other players have moved on in the middle of their career in their prime because of injuries. I don't know that Kyler Murray has had the injuries necessary to do that, but it's his opinion, right? If he feels like he's getting too banged up to play football and he wants to go play center field for the A's, then so be it. But he's on the verge of making $45 million a year. So it would have to be something that's quite detrimental to his health. Two, maybe he's not feeling valued, right? And this is his last year, all this kind of stuff. Should there have been an extension already in the works? Maybe he's not even getting talked to about this. Maybe it was based off of his end to the year or his injury during the year. But value is a big thing. And I don't think if it's value, I don't think that's the right way to go about it, is by deleting all that stuff. I think it's, hey, I want to stay here, pay me the money. I'm willing to sit out if you don't pay me, but I don't do that little boy stuff.
Right.
This leads me to believe that this is a trade.
Interesting.
That it's a trade opportunity.
I see it a little bit differently. I see it much like Swan Song is talking about here. Kyler not going anywhere, just a negotiating tactic. So I see it as, it's interesting, right? He's coming into his 4th year of his rookie deal. They still have the 5th-year option. He's the same as Nick Bosa for the San Francisco 49ers. They were drafted in the same year. Right.
They have to pick up by the draft, yeah.
Yeah, so in this year, they can extend him, as the Niners are going to attempt to do with Nick Bosa, but there's no rush to do it. They can still do it next year. But again, in the message you're sending to the player, you show them you value them by getting that extension done the year early, right? That shows me that you like me. It gives me comfort. Back to the girlfriend-boyfriend analogy that we were referencing earlier. But what could it mean? I mean, it could mean he wants to trade. There's no question that that's one of the possibilities of what it could mean. It could mean he wants to return to baseball. I agree in both of those scenarios. It seems like a poor choice to go about it. I'll be frank. It seems like a poor choice to go about it no matter what he's doing. Yeah. I agree with you on that. But to me, it seems most likely just to be a loud statement from him that says, I'm not happy, and it becomes his leverage for the upcoming contract negotiations.
Here's what I think, and this is not connecting any dots. This is no source of mine. I think maybe Aaron Rodgers might be coming to Arizona. And the only reason you upgrade from Kyler is if you're getting a better quarterback, right? Because the Cardinals made multiple win now moves, right? All pro center, bringing in JJ Watt, bringing in DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green. They made multiple win now moves. If you're going to upgrade from Kyler Murray, you're going to bring in a guy who's better. And the only guy better right now who's available is Aaron Rodgers. And so we talked about the haul that you would have to get or give to get him before we drafted Trey Lance was 3 first-rounders. Well,
right.
If you're giving up the potential MVP who was Kyler Murray in the first half of the season and maybe a first-rounders for Aaron Rodgers to win now, right? You're giving up your future for a better chance to win in the next 3 or 4 years. Maybe that's it. And all that's not from the team asking him if he's okay with it. It's probably like wind from an agent, right? Agents have their tentacles around everywhere.
Sure they do.
And it was probably an agent that was like, hey, like I heard that they reached out to Green Bay to see what the price was of Aaron Rodgers. It involved you. And he got in maybe through a temper tantrum or something like that. I think it's something deeper than just negotiation, because that's not how I would go about it as a human being.
No, not a way that anyone really should go about those negotiations, but that's not saying that couldn't be the reality. I would be fascinated if what you lay out there comes to fruition. I tend to agree with folks that root themselves in the idea that you're never going to trade Aaron Rodgers to the NFC. There was a comment in there by Fable right here. I highly doubt the Packers would trade A-Rod to an NFC team. I see that as like my baseline in evaluating all Rodgers trades, but there is some interesting things to consider in the value of Kyler Murray. To me, it would be a lot of egg on Arizona's face. You came in as the coach your first year. You got rid of the last first-round pick to bring in your first-round pick, and now you're going to go with an old first-round pick? Like, it's an interesting scenario to monitor. I will wait for more details, but it's intriguing.
I 100% disagree with Fable. And the reason being is this. Aaron Rodgers has shown that he's willing to go outside of football, right? He did a guest spot on Jeopardy.
I don't know that he did show that. I thought he folded.
He told that, hey, I'm willing to succeed. And I think that you could possibly say he could have said, hey, I'll give you one more year, Green Bay, and then you got to figure out this. He already said that he's going to have this thing figured out by free agent time, which means in March. He openly said that. And so he's giving Green Bay an opportunity to trade him. I fully believe if Green Bay calls his bluff, he'll just retire because he has multiple opportunities there.
Yeah.
In his life.
I fell for that last year.
With his movie star wife and the opportunity for Jeopardy and all this other kind of stuff. I feel like he could just retire if he wanted to, if they're too, like he already played games last season and then conceded. Do you think he's really going to do that a second season? I don't think so. I think that at his age, he's okay with it. He wants to go to a winner and win. And Green Bay better not F around with him too much because you might get nothing. You might get zero.
To me, they called Rodgers' bluff last year, and he showed that he wasn't willing to stick to his guns.
Is that really a bluff? Rodgers was making $30 million last year. That's not a bluff. He's going to make 40-something million this year.
I mean, it was a bluff. He said he would walk away from the Packers because he wanted to be out of that situation. He ended up playing for the Packers. To me, they called his bluff, and he got very little out of it. He didn't even give himself the right to determine where he goes this season.
Yeah, I just think that. I mean, if the Packers continue pushing in that direction, they might end up with nothing.
I mean, it's true. If you push him far enough, it's possible. I just don't think it's likely. All right, let's transition to Seattle, and let's talk a little bit about their scenario. So Pete Carroll has now said that he's going to continue coaching. He said, I'm healthy. I'm good. I'm going to keep going. You had Ed Donatel was on the way in as an assistant to the defense there, but now is quickly on his way out. Looks like Seahawks got cheap in not making him the defensive coordinator, and Minnesota is stepping in to most likely offer him that defensive coordinator position. So a little bit of coaching kerfluffle for them, but they do still have Carroll. And now we're talking about Russell Wilson. So this one's from Ian Rappaport last week. An update on Russell Wilson's future, said a trade shouldn't be ruled out at this time. And then Kevin Sheehan of the Kevin Sheehan Show, a Washington-based podcast, Washington, D.C., said, I did talk to a few people in Vegas, and the only thing that I will tell you is something that I feel confident in, based on the sources, and that is that Russell Wilson is not against being traded to Washington, the Commanders. Just gut feeling on this one. Do you believe Russell Wilson is with the Seahawks next year or some other team?
Gut feeling, I think he's with the Seahawks, but if I was the Seahawks, I'd go the other way.
Yeah.
And they doubled down by extending both Lockett and Metcalf and to help that, but their defense is horrible. And their run game has been subpar. And the only reason they won is that Russell Wilson played well above his rookie stature, and they had the best defense in the NFL. And that's the reason they won the championship. And that can't last when people want extensions, right? The whole Legion of Boom got extensions everywhere. And so what do you do now, right? Do you trade away everybody? Because you could do one of two things. You could trade away everybody and just cut it down to the studs.
Right.
Or you could just trade away Russell Wilson, which would allot you a lot of picks. Bring in a quarterback, maybe like Ryan Fitzpatrick. I know he's coming off the hip injury, but a gunslinger, or maybe a Mitch Trubisky or somebody of that nature who is capable of throwing the ball downfield, not to the level of Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Use those picks to develop the offensive line, get cheaper in most aspects of the NFL, and start over. But there's plenty of teams in the shortage of the QB market. There's plenty of teams that could use Russell Wilson.
God, you'd get a fortune for the man. You would get a fortune for him.
And I'm looking at the NFC West division, right? If Kyler stays, the Cardinals are going to be effective for a while. The Niners should be effective based on Trey Lance for a while.
Yes.
And the Rams should be effective as long as Matt Stafford is there. And so where do the Seahawks fit in? They don't. And so why wouldn't this be a time for them to reboot? If you reboot and say, hey, 5 years from now, we're going to be effective, you might be the cheapest up-and-coming team in that division and could pounce on the downfall of another team. I think that would be the route I would go. I know that Seahawks fans aren't ready to hear that, but I would do that.
Yeah, to me, that makes a ton of sense. To me, if I'm the Seahawks, the first question is, are you retooling or are you rebuilding? If it's a 5-year plan, you're rebuilding, right? And at that point, Russell Wilson doesn't make sense. You got to get what you can for him now. If you're just retooling and you think you can stay competitive in a highly competitive division, as you just laid out, Randon, then maybe you try to sweet talk him into staying. But I think that's the crux of it for me, is that this comes down to, does Russell Wilson force his way out of Seattle? And quite honestly, he's another guy that has sort of blown hard at times, blustered some, but then when rubber meets the road, he hasn't really forced his way out in years past. So until I see something from him a little more concrete, I'm going to believe, as you started out with, that my gut says he's back in Seattle this time next year.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that you look at, there's a couple teams that make sense. I mean, the Giants have to decide on their quarterback 5th-year option this year, Daniel Jones. Saquon is on his last year of his rookie deal, so they might have moves, but
and that's a market that Russell Wilson's willing to play in, New York, primetime market.
Well, more ads and endorsement revenue probably market. You also have Tampa. Like, he could step into Tampa. Tampa could re-sign Godwin and really try to make a push there. I don't know what I know Brady took a discount because his wife makes $400 million a year, but
yeah, it's not bad when your wife makes $400 million.
Yeah, but or that's her contract with Victoria's. Either way, she's gorgeous and she makes a lot of money. So Brady can take a discount, but that's an option there for him as well. And those are both, even though still in the NFC, you still don't play those divisions, but for every 4 years or 3 years. And so it's something to take a look at, where Seattle could still get a lot of money for an up and coming team like the Giants, who has a lot of offensive weapons like Galladay and Shepard.
Sure.
And then you have a team that is Super Bowl ready in the Bucs, who have to decide on, is Kyle Trask the answer, or do they need a new quarterback?
Yeah, I'm less averse to the Seahawks trading Russell Wilson within the conference, because of the fact that it feels like it's ending a bit more amicably, whereas the Aaron Rodgers situation got pretty ugly last season, and I feel like there'll be some potential spite moves that could have happened there. Well, we got to hit on the Rams in the NFC West, because it's a full NFC West update. They are clearly in the Super Bowl this week. So just high level, quick thoughts on it. Who are you rooting for in the game, and what's your key deciding factor of the outcome?
I'm going for the Bengals, just because like their team, like we talked about it last week, like their first playoff win via text message, like being able to text your first playoff win, and like they haven't been able to do that. That's how long they've been out of the playoffs.
That's wild.
And then I just like Burrow's attitude. Like, he's just a boss, and I think he's the definition of a young quarterback. He said, I do all my work in silence. I don't really post any of that kind of stuff. I just show up and handle my business. And you really like that. And I think it complements what you got with Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, and all those guys who like to have, I guess they all like to have, Burrow likes to have fun too and everything like that. But he seems like a stoic leader. You have Taylor, who has been the coach, who has been very good at orchestrating this offense. Mixon has been slandered for being not a top 10 running back, even though he's the workhorse of that back. And then Chase, right? He came into the league. I didn't draft him in fantasy because of all the drops in preseason. He definitely showed me wrong. I'm eating crow.
That was a mistake.
I'm still eating crow. I got leftovers in my fridge. And so it's just been, I think that they are the Cinderella team and they deserve to win. If the Rams win, I'll be happy for Stafford and Cooper Kupp, because I like him as a player and as a person.
Yes.
But for the most part, I definitely want the Bengals to win.
I have to echo basically everything that you said there, and then just bring in this one that I think sums it up on my beliefs for Sunday. Ian Sharp with, I'm hoping for the Bengals, but I got to admit the Rams are probably going to win it. Sort of resigning myself to that so that I'm pleasantly surprised if the Bengals pull it out. Well, let's transition. This is our final topic. And this is a topic that's going to be ongoing throughout a series of shows here on Between Two Beards. It is going to be past performance, the grade for the 2021 season for those players in that position group, and then future value. how do the 49ers value that player? Are they already under contract? Are they a potential for an extension? Are they potentially going to get traded? Or are they a pending free agent? And if so, will the 49ers prioritize re-signing them? We are starting with the most fascinating of the position groups, being the quarterback position. Thankfully, that limits us to two dudes, Randon. Yeah. So much like Between Two Beards, we are talking about two guys. We're two guys talking about two guys. So let's get into it about Jimmy Garoppolo. What do you have his grade for the 2021 season?
I would say it's a B, right? I mean, he's had a lot of downgrade. But I think what really holds him up is his character. And so, the way he handled the situation, he really only said one thing, right? He said, like, I'm not happy with the trade. I wish I wanted to be here, pretty much was his sentiment. And after that, he said, didn't really say anything about it. And at the end of the year, Trey Lance was like, hey, we're going to be best friends the rest of my life. And so whether that was talk or realism, still that's something to be said about how they've handled themselves. And I really enjoy it. And when they were 3-5, he knew the writing was on the wall, and he battled back and got us into the playoffs, or was the quarterback that helped the team get in the playoffs. You could say it was the rushing or the defense. I know there's going to be probably chat saying that he didn't do anything, but for me, he was the leader. He was the one touching the ball every single play and got that. And you saw it with all the players backing him up, right? Like it was, hey, like this is our guy. We rode to the championship. We did this, we did that. And we talked about that being battle tested and how that affects your feelings about something that happened. Man, when you ride to the NFC Championship 2 times in 3 years with one guy, you're going to have those feelings. You're going to have those types of emotions.
No doubt.
I really think that a B is where it ends up this season. Wasn't as effective in the playoffs as Swang Song said there. He said he gives them a C-.
Yeah, I thought that was a good differentiating factor between
and maybe
the season
so,
and the playoffs.
because he didn't really have that, but he had the 2 throws that led to the final drive in Green Bay for the field goal. He had the one of the final drives in Dallas with plenty of good throws in that game. He just didn't really perform with the Rams when it really mattered. So, yeah, I mean, I would say probably B and a C is what I would give him for the playoffs, would be a C. And what about you? What do you how do you feel? How do you rate him?
Yeah, first of all, I love that you called out the Trey Lance quote about Jimmy Garoppolo. We're going to be best friends for the rest of my life. But then they asked Jimmy about that, and he sort of skirts it. Like, I mean, come on, dude. All you had to do was be like, yeah, we're going to be best buds from here on out. You didn't have to mean it, but you should have said it. I'm detracting something from Jimmy for not having Trey's back in that regard. I thought it was a little cold the way he responded. But aside from that, I have written down right here in my notes, clear as day, that we are in lockstep. I have solid B in my book.
Yeah.
To me, it was just like 2019 in many respects. When you go back and look at the statistics, it was a remarkably similar season, right? He started 16 games in 2019, 15 in 2021. He had a 69% completion percentage, 68 in 2021. In 2019, he threw for just a hair under 4,000 yards. In 2021, with one fewer game, he threw for 3,800 yards, right? It was very similar. His touchdown to interception ratio was better in 2019, and that could have been the difference between a couple of games. But to me, it's summed up to say that he was good enough in both years. He was good enough to win if other phases of the game came through. He wasn't good enough to overcome his own mistakes at times, and he certainly wasn't good enough to cover up defensive or special teams issues when they arose this season. And I would say very few games felt like it was Jimmy was the primary reason that they lost. But there were also very few games where he was the reason that we won. And if there were more of one than the other,
three game winning drives for Jimmy this season in the regular season.
Yeah, no doubt, right? And even in those games, I think just because he had the game winning drive, I don't know that you can necessarily say he was the thing that got him over the cusp, but he gets credit for those game-winning drives.
Because why did they need a game-winning drive?
Exactly, right? Yeah. You do have to look at that complete game, no doubt about it. But I would say if you were to say how many games was he the bigger factor in the win versus the bigger factor in the loss, I would say there were probably a couple more games where he was the bigger factor in the loss of those. But his season felt a lot like his career. Some great moments, some head-scratching moments, but in its entirety, pretty solid overall.
So bring out your crystal ball there, Rob. Like, wax it up a little bit. And what do you think the offseason holds for Jimmy G, and how much can the Niners get for him when they trade him?
When I saw Bullpup 33, one of our sneakerheads coming in, I thought, oh my goodness, he's stolen my thunder, but not really, because we differ a little bit here. So Bullpup 33 coming in saying, Jimmy, throw in Dre Greenlaw to Pittsburgh for a 1 and a 4. The response to that was, the Niners should jump all over that, right? People are on board with that. To me, I have been calling for Pittsburgh for a long time. I see that as still, to me, the most likely landing situation, and I'm sticking with my gut, which, if I'm honest, I'm tempted to lessen the package, but I'm sticking with it. I think the Niners get a 2nd and a 4th. And I'm going to go one step further on this program and say the 2nd and the 4th will both be in this year's draft. I may be going too far. Maybe the 4th is next year, but I'm saying it. It's been said now. 2nd and a 4th from Pittsburgh for Jimmy Garoppolo.
I would love that. And I think that we talked about it off air is that I think Jimmy might be the first quarterback to fall, because you look at all the rest of Kyler has been now a social media problem.
Yeah.
He's had the disdain of fans. Disdain's a little harsh word, but the of not being able to form as a quarterback, right? You have to get him outside the pocket because he's so short for him to be effective.
Hey, when you look that bad in the playoffs, I don't think disdain is too harsh of a word. I think you're right about that.
You have the toxic personality of Aaron Rodgers, and the fact that I think he could leave at any moment. Do you really want to trade 3 first-round picks or 2 first-round picks to a quarterback that'd be like, hey, F it, I'm just going to be with my wife. I'm going to, write out my contract and that's it. And then you've paid that opportunity for only 1 year, which might be worth it if you win a Super Bowl. But if you don't, then you're devastating the future to your franchise.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson is an unknown thing, whether Seattle's really serious about dealing him.
Right.
Then you go to Jimmy Garoppolo. With Tom Brady retiring, it opened up another team, and so that means supply and demand. That's high for a quarterback.
Yep.
One, you showed the leadership of Jimmy Garoppolo this year. You've shown a guy who is willing to eat all the public demand of what was announced of him, all the 50-50 talk from Niners fans all year. We all know that, how Twitter has been toxic with all that kind of stuff. And so, I think that Jimmy might be the first to fall, and I think it could be even more. You look at Carson Wentz, got a conditional based on his time on the field.
Yep.
The Niners could probably orchestrate something similar, right? Tomlin hasn't had a losing season. So what if Jimmy goes, hey, if he makes it to the AFC Championship game, do we get a first in 2023?
I'll tell you what, though, if I'm the Niners, I stay away from that, because I think this is the draft you got to hit the home run to really set Trey up for the future. You know what I mean? I understand that first would be significantly more valuable the next year, but I think that the Niners might want picks now to fill out this roster. I could be totally wrong about that, but
let me throw this to you then. Would you do Jimmy and our 2nd for the 20th overall from the Steelers?
Oh, snap. Yes, I would. What? Okay. Anything else? The 4th in addition to that, or just?
I mean, there's going to be a lot of sub picks in the later rounds. But
yeah. Well, if they threw in a 4th, like we need to get 2 picks back in my assertion there. So if they threw in a 4th with that deal, I'm on board 100%. GD5 points out the picks I laid out that Pittsburgh could throw out there. He gives the actual number. That would translate to the 52nd pick is Pittsburgh in the 2nd round, and the 137th, that's Pittsburgh's 4th rounder compensatory pick. So at the end of that 4th round, if that's the package that comes back for Jimmy Garoppolo, number one, I'm going to find my receipt from November sometime where I predicted it, but I will be ecstatic, because to me, that would be a good trade package for Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think so too. I don't think Jimmy is worth a 1st round pick. I don't think Jimmy is worth a 2nd round pick based on his talent, but in this market with the weak quarterback drafting class, I think that he is. And so if we add in a 2nd, or maybe we add in our 3rd that we got from McDaniel and orchestrate that, I think that there's a possibility for a 1st, but overall I'd be happy with a 2nd and maybe a late round pick for Jimmy. or a third round pick and a quality player that could start on this team next year.
Well, if that happens, Swan Song has put his money where his mouth is. If that happens, Swan Song will donate $500 to the charity of our choice. So mark that down.
That would be my bank account. Yeah, no.
Yeah, Randon McMahon's kids, the Randon McMahon house. Yeah, we can name a new charity. We can come up with a new charity, and Swan Song is going to fund it.
Yeah.
All right, let's transition to the other quarterback in the building, Trey Lance. Now, we have a small sample size, quite obviously, but if you're giving the young rookie a grade on the season, where would it be?
I think with the lack of first team reps and everything like that, I would say probably B+, because his first game was a little shaky. The Seattle game, he came in unbeknownst, because of the injury, and then he had a full time for the Houston game. Sorry, I'm backing up a little bit to change my foot stance here. Getting ready for the Trey Lance news.
Get loose, buddy.
But I really think that was a B+, maybe A-. And it's just not that he blew the doors off, right? He had his moments, but I thought that he handled the situation well, being that, we've talked about it on multiple podcasts. Now he's one of 5 players in the last 2 decades drafted in the top 5 to play less than 4 games. So, usually when you're drafted that high, you play. And for him to be brought into that situation, for the San Francisco to put that capital in him, normally you play, and he didn't. And then what is that situation like? How do you handle it? I think the San Francisco 49ers did a good job about keeping him away from the media.
Yes.
For pretty much the whole season.
The hungry freaking sharks of the media.
Yeah. Because then he has to deal with, what do you think about Jimmy every week? What do you think about
oh my God, it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah. So for the San Francisco 49ers did a phenomenal job keeping away from that until he was ready to start. So I think the fact that he handled his business well, the fact that he showed up in Houston to win a game that the Niners really needed to win, as much as people don't want to say it, that was a win or go home game based on most playoff scenarios. He won that game, set the record for most average yards downfield, the best downfield passing game by any quarterback in the last 3 years by Next Gen Stats. And I really liked what I saw, and you're going to take the lumps with a rookie quarterback, and he had those lumps, but I think the promise of him far outweighed whatever he showed in the negative realm.
Yeah, I like that summation of the season on him. I just want to take a moment to bring this in because I find it to be funny before giving my Trey Lance breakdown. But in reference to Swan Song donating $500 to charity if we end up getting a first rounder for Jimmy in any fashion, even if that means sending out our second in order to get back a first with Jimmy, Ian Sharp points out we should donate to the Jimmy Fund. Yes, that is what we will do. Jimmy has his own favorite charity. And if it is a first rounder, we will make it Jimmy's favorite charity.
Could you imagine that giving a second round for Jimmy and then him netting a first round, and he got us to 2 NFC Championship games and 1 Super Bowl? That's what I call an investment, right?
It would be sweet. I stand by my original statement of a second and fourth from Pittsburgh, and I'm going to throw some money out there on the line. If I'm absolutely on the nose correct with it, I will donate $100 to the charity of Swan Song's choice. I don't know why I'm making it Swan Song's choice, but he threw out the wager in the first place. So
why don't you bet?
If I'm dead on with the second and fourth.
Right now, I think it's plus 400 to Tampa, plus 400 to Pittsburgh. Why don't you bet $100? And if you win, you donate the total amount to a charity.
You and I connect offline because I may need to bet through you. Oregon's betting system is so screwed up, I can't place a wager without driving to the frickin' local Indian casino. And that sucks because it's an hour and a half away. Let me get to my final grade here on Trey Lance, and then we'll keep rapping about this.
We got so much stuff going on,
It's just too much going on. All right, so with Trey, I started to type this, and I thought to myself, man, it kind of feels like it should be an incomplete grade, but that's a total cop-out, and so you can't do that. And so I tried to average the 2 performances, and I came out with a B- overall grade on this one. That first start was rough in my book, and it would have warranted a D+, C- at the best. But a big part of that to me was on Coach Shanahan and the actual game plan that they came in with. Now, that could have been admittedly a reflection on Trey Lance's skill set at that moment. That could be why Coach Shanahan went with that game plan. But the game plan was poor. Trey Lance's performance was not ideal, and therefore I'm going below average on that. But then he comes back in a big way against, yes, a less talented defense within the league, but not a JV defense, not a college defense, an NFL caliber defense that had just made quick work of the Los Angeles Chargers the week prior and really lit it up. And that had to be a B plus, A minus type of a performance. And so when I average the two together, I'm going with a B minus. I had to come up from that C plus to the B minus because of the progression throughout the year. The idea that he grew by leaps and bounds to me is the remarkable part of this story. And it's what gives me hope for the future. But throwing it back to you, Randon, talking about the future, how do you see the future value for Trey Lance with the 49ers organization? Are you buying any of these smoke screens, or is it all the Lance show from here on out?
Yeah, I don't think that he's walking on water. You know, like some fans are saying, like he's going to turn water into wine. But I think he's going to be a good quarterback. You saw Shanahan. I like the game plan. He's going to take a couple of days off because he's been nonstop since the draft process. Take a couple of days off, weeks off. He's going to go down to a quarterback coach in Southern Cal. He's asking wide receivers to come down and join him to create that mind meld that we talked about. And then he's going to get first team reps.
Yes,
the whole way through OTAs.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff. And I think that's going to create an unknown. Like that, you're going to see probably, based on what I feel Trey Lance is, you're going to see a different quarterback week one. And I have a great promise him. I don't think that I see some people saying that he's probably the third best quarterback in the NFC or all this kind of stuff like that right away without anything. But
that seems early.
There's a possibility for that. And if he can show that, but I think that he's shown enough from the mental standpoint, from his character, from how he approaches the game, from his limited action, that I think that he could be a top 5 NFC quarterback next season, easily, maybe top 3 if by the end of the season, just because of the intangibles which you can't measure, and that's me just projecting. It's not what it's not what he is at this point, but from now until September, that's a lot of time for his game to mold. That's a lot of gestation, as if you will, in scientific terms. And
that is a long gestation period.
Yeah. And so I think that he might be a completely different quarterback. And, there's a lot of free agents. Like, do we sign Jennings? I see Samoan there for Christian Watson in the draft. Do we go another wide receiver instead of other positions, which we're going to, maybe talk about in future weeks?
Most definitely.
But ultimately for Trey Lance, I think that he's on the right direction. I don't think he's the next incarnation of anybody yet. And people need to pump the brakes on expectations. I do think that he leads this team to a playoff spot. I do think the fact that he will be, or the Niners will be 1 or 2 in the NFC West, and he has a chance to win a game. I think I said that this year, and I believe that next year.
I agree, and let me say this, that in fantasy football drafts, I will probably be pretty hot on Trey Lance because I think that this offense and Trey specifically may not put up a ton of yards, although when you combine rushing and receiving, I think that he will crest 4,000 yards total. Yeah. But I believe it will be a lot of touchdowns. I think that the 49ers will continue to be one of the, if not the most efficient teams within the red zone because of their unique set of skill players and then the addition of Trey Lance in there alongside a very talented run scheme. So that's my take on his talent next year. Flipping it to the other side of
before you go to your next point, I want to ask you a question really quick.
Yeah,
You
please.
brought up a good point. The Niners were mediocre in 3rd and 4th down conversions, but they were first in the league in red zone. Do you think with Trey Lance and his rushing ability that the 3rd downs go up and the red zone stays the same, or do you think it kind of balances out?
That's interesting. It's a tough one because, quite honestly, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, for his struggles, is a pretty clutch 3rd, 4th down quarterback. I mean, if you look back, he has come through in some pretty remarkable situations like that. My anticipation would be that the 49ers, with a more dominant rushing attack, which I predict they will have with the addition of Lynn and the addition of Trey Lance into the starting quarterback position, my guess is they would find themselves in considerably fewer third and long scenarios, and therefore you would think the end result of that is that their third down conversions would be slightly better this year than next. And then in the red zone, I'm just going to take into account that you're adding in a weapon who stresses defenses more. So I don't see a downtick in the red zone completion percentage, in the red zone touchdown
Probably
percentage.
maybe not first place, but top 5, you think?
Yes, correct. That would be an accurate summation of my point there.
I can agree with you.
So in regard to the
point,
San Francisco 49ers and their feelings on Trey Lance, to me, his future is freaking set. He's the future of the franchise, barring, and I'm going to throw this out there, even though I know people are going to be like, stop talking about this. It's not going to happen. But there is a, 1% chance that Tom Brady's story isn't done. Let's just be honest about that. He is the type of guy that you could see obsessed with a storybook ending to his career, because it was a storybook type of career. And to leave the way he currently is leaving is not a storybook ending. The guy had so many chances to leave at the top of the mountain right after a win, just go out on top, and he didn't. He's contemplated playing for the Niners. So Trey is the future, unless there's that 1-year run by Tom Brady who comes in and offers some sweetheart deal. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm not predicting it's going to happen. But if the opportunity presents itself for San Francisco, they will absolutely consider it.
I think, and I don't wish this upon Trey, but if he gets injured somehow in preseason or the offseason and there's an open quarterback slot earlier in the year, Niners are going to pay whatever they need to pay to get Tom Brady. But yeah, I hope Trey Lance gets his shot just because of the rookie contract and everything like that. But Tom, based on the man in the arena, based on everything he said, he might sign for $5 million just to win another championship.
I'm telling you, just to get on the San Francisco 49ers roster.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think it's kind of troubling. I think it's more than 1%. I think it's probably made closer to 3 to 5%, just because there's so much grumbles in the air already. Yeah. Like 1 week after his retirement.
It's wild how that's already, like, dude just retired and we're already talking about him coming back.
But maybe that's just the Jimmy stands, right? Maybe they're like, oh, we want that kind of person, and that's where all the traction is coming from. I hope that the Niners give Trey Lance his full due in his second season and take advantage of this rookie contract. But if they signed Tom Brady to a decent deal and it wasn't, 15, 20, 25 million or something like that, then you just got to roll with the Brady, man. You got to roll and hope you get that 8th ring for him and the 6th for San Francisco.
The bottom line for me is I'm not mad either way. I think that it's a 99% chance that it's Trey Lance for the future of this franchise. I'm okay with that one-off scenario where it's Tom Brady. I don't think it happens, but you can't ignore the rumblings. You can't ignore the weirdness of his dad saying, no, he's not retiring, but then the retirement announcement. Like, there's just enough things out there that make you scratch your head just a little bit about it. But that's where we will leave it. No need to get any deeper into any conspiracy theories. Randon, this was a phenomenal show.
It was. And we can't forget Nate Sudfeld. And we'll just say one thing. I still think he'll be our third quarterback.
Practice squad counts. Bring on the Nate Sudfeld.
Yeah, I think he'll still be our third quarterback. I think that we'll probably look at maybe bringing in another backup like Tyrod or something of that nature. We'll see how much that is. I think the backup quarterback needs to be as cheap as possible because you need to make use of the rookie quarterback or the rookie contract for Lance. But Sudfeld, I think, should be our practice squad just because he's been here. He'll be cheap enough.
I agree. I think he makes the practice squad because he's a very valuable player in that way. He knows the system. You have to have that third quarter. We could still be in a freaking pandemic situation where I doubt it. I doubt the NFL. It just magically, no more positive tests in the playoffs. I think that's the future of the NFL, not worrying about positive tests.
Yeah, if there are, they're throwing them out because they want the Super Bowl to go through.
but you at least have the possibility of injury. So having him as a safety blanket on the practice squad makes a ton of sense for me. I disagree slightly in the backup quarterback in that if I were in charge, I think it would be worth it to spend a few extra dollars to bring in a high quality backup, much like Tyrod Taylor. I would think you could only afford Tyrod Taylor if he's willing to take somewhat of a discount to come back and play for Anthony Lynn, who he respects greatly, because he would be at the high end of backup quarterbacks. So I'm not willing to go that far, but I'm also not at the other end of the spectrum where it sounds like you are, where you're thinking, let's have some value at that position so we can spend money elsewhere. To me, I'm in that middle ground somewhere where I want a savvy veteran. I want a running quarterback, much like a Tyrod Taylor, who can mentor Trey Lance, and I want someone who can win 1 or 2 games. And to me, that's that small pool of players that are a little bit more expensive, but not crazy, where it's a, whether it is Tyrod Taylor, whether it is Andy Dalton, or someone a little bit lower down the line, like a Marcus Mariota. I think any of those, to me, would be an exciting backup to bring in.
Yeah, I think Mariota probably gets a higher money than either of the other two.
I think so too.
In my opinion, I think Tyrod
Although
Taylor's,
he had the lower of those 3 this previous season. So I agree that he flip-flops this year, but if you look at this year's past contracts that are expiring soon, he actually was the lowest compensated.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll be wrong, but I think those names are very well out there.
Yeah.
And I believe his name is Joe Johnson. He was another practice guy that came in for the Jets. Has had multiple stints with the Niners, and maybe
Josh
he comes
Johnson.
in.
Josh Johnson has been with the Niners a lot.
And so maybe he comes in super cheap.
That would be really cheap. That would be a bargain.
And then we can pay Laken Tomlinson, which we'll get to in our past performance, future value segment, probably next week or the week after.
You heard it here first. We are keeping up with the segment ongoing from here on out, making sure that we get to the past performance, future value of all the important players for the San Francisco 49ers. Like I said, this was a dope show. I am always pleased to have my co-host on here with me, Randon McMahon. His information is down below. Go follow him on Twitter. And we will be back next week, pretty much the same time, 5 p.m. Wednesdays, give or take a half hour. Follow us on Twitter if you want the official announcement day of. I will be back with the Sneakerhead call-in show tomorrow. I'm going to do a little poll on my channel to see where people want to have it, whether it's 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. We've got options, people, but I will be back. Randon, I will see you next week, good sir.
Man, I got nothing else to say. Show him that mug and let's sound it off, buddy.
Let's do it. Until then, you know the drill. Cheers, Niner faithful.